Hi, my name is Noelle Kerber, and I currently teach at Arizona State University as a graduate student. And today I'll be talking about my self reflection of teaching. So, just some pointers. We're going to talk about Spanish teaching, sample teaching material, and then a reflection. For Spanish teaching, I really see the goal as intercultural communicative competence. So, this means that we are enabling, encouraging students to develop communicative skills, but in a way that's intercultural. So, that means that they need to be able to communicate within a given culture. And a lot of times that has to do with pragmatics, which I do a lot of my research on. So, I really love tying in what I learn into my actual teaching practices. Uh, I also see it as a way to foster the desire and skills to learn. This is one of the main goals I have. So, this a lot of times can be metacognitive skills, helping students learn how to learn better, maybe. And also just asking deeper questions to probe another level, a deeper level of thinking. And then for Spanish, I think it's really important to acknowledge that it's a diverse language with a lot of variation. So, that intercultural communicative competence is a big role. We need to be able to communicate in the various contexts, cultures, countries that there are that speak Spanish. And I think that plays into things really just as basic as vocabulary and grammar. And one way I like to include that is through songs and authentic material, just to introduce students to the variation. At ASU, we use flipped classrooms. So that means that the students um, go and they learn the content in their homes or wherever they're learning it, and then they bring their knowledge and understanding to the classroom where we practice it and really refine their understanding. I think that this works great for the communicative method. So we do a lot of partner and group work in class to really practice getting that output, um, and helping students just to co-construct their understanding of the language. And then I think that another big thing is just motivation. So working with partners a lot of times increases motivation, but I also try to bring in relatable, engaging material. So today I'm just going to provide an example of one of the lesson plans that I have. And for this lesson plan, we were covering chapter 8, which talks a lot about food. And the students, we were working towards describing and talking about food preferences and making comparisons. So to start, I usually like to capture the students' attention. And for this lesson plan, I did it with memes or memes. This was just a little bit of a review as well as pronouns. So, for example, the your family's face when you present your boyfriend, kind of funny, kind of relatable. My face when they ask me for a favor. So, just a little bit of review and just something to grab their attention. Then we go in and we kind of review what they learned the previous night or whenever they did their homework. So, this is a really simple, fast activity. We can do it individually or in partner work. For this specific day, we did it individually. Students just try to figure out what from category B would fit in A. While this isn't super communicative, it kind of helps lay the base and make sure everyone is on the same page grammatically. So, we'll go over the answers after students have done that. Then, if you look here, number 3, we'll start going into more communicative practice. So, these are just some questions that usually ask students about themselves, but sometimes I try to use other subjects as well that get them to use the grammar and vocabulary concepts that we're going over. Um, and I think it really helps when students are having to think and answer, maybe even about themselves, to get them to be more engaged with it. And sometimes I try to ask fun questions like, was your bill more expensive than your Chipotle or something like that? Also, the next activity that we did in this day was a authentic material, kind of cultural piece that tied in a restaurant that is well known in Argentina for their amazing food. So we talked about cultural differences. They watched the video first, one that was in English, which I don't love using English, but it was a good way to kind of lay the foundational knowledge, kind of get background knowledge, pre listening activity. Then we watched a video in Spanish talking about the restaurant. Then we answered the questions that are on the screen. The questions were there the whole time to kind of provide another form of um, scaffolding, if you will, just try to help them better understand what to listen for. Then we did this activity, which was super fun. The students had to create, these are the directions, but they had to create a menu and an ad with a group having at least 7 dishes, and then their ad had to have 3 complete sentences. And then afterwards, we viewed all of the restaurants of the other groups and kind of compared, tying again that grammar concept of comparison, each menu. To do this, I first gave them an example. So this doesn't meet all the requirements, but it gives an example of what it might look like and the kind of things that they needed to write. So this is my example. And then this is an example of student work. So this group of students decided to do a Mexican restaurant. They had their items, their prices, and then they described it for the class in general after they were done working on it. And then they had their ad as well. And while there were some small grammar mistakes, I think that it really helped to get that communicative practice. They were talking with other students in the group about the menu, what they wanted to include, and then they also had to use presentational mode to present it. So it was really fun. Students loved being creative with it. And then to kind of wrap up the lesson, we did this last communicative practice. So it was just a little bit more about preferences, tying it back. And then I also encouraged them to explain why they prefer one thing over another using kind of what they were learning in the chapter, but also allowing students who were maybe more advanced to go into a lot more detail about why they preferred one thing over another. And then to conclude, we went back over, I just show the objectives again. We're working on describing, talking about food, preferences, and comparisons. And then I always end class with reminders. So for this class, it was just homework and then a writing assignment they had coming up. Overall, what drives my teaching is just this idea that you can't make anyone really learn anything. We have to encourage students to just think and want to learn and probe their thinking and give them material that they're going to enjoy working with. While this isn't always practical, I think that this is my goal. And I think it works really well with Spanish because there's this whole relational aspect that's really fun. In the future, I would like to work on continuing to grow and expanding my teaching practice. So, one thing I want to do is get a lot better about encouraging 95% Spanish in classroom. I think sometimes students feel uncomfortable or unsure and they just fall back to English. And while I don't want them to have high anxiety in the classroom, I do think that I could push Spanish a little bit more. Additionally, I want to work on getting more pragmatic instruction in the classroom, and I'm always learning new fun ways to do activities. Thank you so much, and let me know if you have any questions.